I know a few of you guys joined a little bit late, but up till this point, do any of you guys have any questions or would like to just like us to repeat anything? Okay, if not, we'll move on to the next part of our presentation, which is just learning about Python. And if you've never heard that before, we'll kind of just get into what it is a little bit later on, so stay tuned for that. Sorry.
Okay, so we just mentioned that we're going to be talking about Python. But before we can talk about what Python is, we need to talk about what a programming language is. So basically, it's how a computer communicates, like how do you communicate with a computer? Like it says, it's a language. So we're basically, like the slide says, it refers to a language used to write computer programs. So basically, you're telling the computer how to do things. We mentioned earlier with the computers, they can do things like, for example, like basic arithmetic. And we'll be going into how, for example, Python works to communicate with a computer. So there's different types of programming languages. Python specifically is an object-oriented programming language, which basically means it kind of works in categories. There's like the big part, the big code, that kind of like, okay, what is that big task you overall want to achieve? And within there, there's little bits that work together to overall accomplish this task. And there's other popular programming languages. Something that, for example, basic websites, you guys looked at HTML last week. There's Java, which is something that's also object-oriented. So there's a lot of different types of programming languages that are really popular, and they all serve different purposes.
Now, what makes Python unique? It's mainly known for its simplicity because its code looks a lot like everyday English, unlike other programming languages, and its syntax is super easy to learn, and which is why it's a preferred programming choice for beginners to learn. And currently, it's the second most popular programming language, and it's used in different types of fields for a variety of different tasks, including web development, artificial intelligence, and data science, and many more. And the main reason that Python is widely used worldwide, aside from being easy to learn, is because it has a variety of different libraries open that do solve a different purpose, which makes it easier to use Python as there's already built-in code that you can just simply run. And now we'll be going into a little bit about how the Python syntax works and examples of how we'll be able to use Python.
Alright, so Himani has the Python up. So one of the first important things to really learn about code in general is what a variable is. So Himani, what's an example of a variable we could have? Well, you could type in pretty much anything, but of course, when you type anything in code, there's also a lot of rules that come. And there's also not exactly rules, but more of conventions, where it's like, for example, to have more of a longer word. So if you want to, like, let's say we want to do some math, one variable we could type in is number. And that's better than just typing something as simple as x, because it's more defined. It explains more clearly to whoever wants to read your code later, like, okay, that's what this thing is. It's supposed to hold a number. So basically, variables just hold values. And there's a lot of different types of values you could have, not just numbers. There's also strings, which are basically just like words. You could combine a lot to make a sentence, and it'll still count as a string. There's a lot of different ways you can use variables, and that's one of the most crucial parts of code.
Next, we'll be talking about how to use these variables. I know Yakul kind of talked about what a variable is, but what are some conventions to naming one? So we can't just call it random things like 1, 2, or 3, because naming variables has a few rules. For example, all variable names cannot start with a number. So if you were to just assign like 1, 2, 3 to a variable name, it would not be able to function properly. So you'd have to start with a letter. And another part of defining a variable is you can't just write number. So here, the way that you would assign a value to this number variable would be by putting an equal sign, just like we do in math, and then assigning it value. For example, say I want to assign it 3. And so now this gives the number variable a value of 3. But now how do we use this variable called number? So Nicole will talk a little bit about how we would print this.
So we have this variable called number. Well, something that we can ask a computer to do is do addition. Let's do that. So we can basically, if we want, we can make it so that, like, what's a nice number? 8. 8 is one of my favorite numbers. We can make it so that whatever is in the number variable will add to 8. So in order to actually see this result, we're going to need to also use a few methods. So for example, if we want to print out the result of the sum that we're doing, we're going to have to use something called the print method. And methods are basically kind of like built-in commands, so that whatever you put in, as long as it works with that method, because methods require different types of data, then we'll be good. So, for example, we can make it so that we print our number, and whatever number is in there will add to 8.
So first I'll just go ahead and print the number, just so that you guys can see how it works. So once I click the run button, we can see that the output is 3. And I just wanted to also point out that all methods, like Nicole said, have parentheses and whatever is inside of the parentheses. So here our variable number, which is defined as 3, will be like taken into the method to be for this method, which is print. So this will just output that whatever's inside onto our screen. Next, as Nicole was saying, if we wanted to do addition, for example, there's like a few different. One way would be to have numbers inside of the print statement, because the print method also has the ability to perform operations within. So for example, if I had number plus 8, do you guys have any predictions as what that would return? If not, that's okay. But it'll just print what 3 plus 8 is, which is just 11. So yeah, that's just a little bit about how the print statements and variables work. And next we'll be talking a little bit about strings. And string is basically it's just a string of, it's just a sequence of letters. So for example, if I had sentence, for example, and the way you define strings, or like the sequence of letters, is just through quotation marks. And whatever is inside of the quotation marks becomes, we just put quotation marks so that basically the computer recognizes that it's not a text and not a variable name. So if I write like hello, for example, and then I could print this again. Does anyone have any questions about this so far? Or anything they would like us to try or do? If not, can someone tell me what they think this would print? So if I ran this, what aside from like what we already have so far, what do you think this statement would print onto our screen? And here you can just kind of guess from like the output that's shown below. Oh. Are you guys able to hear us? I think someone just said that. Can someone just confirm if they're able to hear us clearly?
I think you guys may be muted. I think that's the problem if we are asking questions, because we're not able to hear if there's any.
Yeah, so make sure you're unmute before.
Sorry, did you ask us a question?
Yeah, I was just, can you hear us?
Yes, loud and clear. Loud and clear.
Okay. I was just going to ask, what did like the students think the output of this statement would be based on what's already been explained? Does anyone have a guess? It doesn't have to be correct, just...
Okay, somebody has the answer. Yeah? They say, what would the output be? The output be based on what they have to do. Who knows the answer? They're still trying to figure out.
That's okay. We can just explain this one for now. So whenever you're calling the variable, the computer just looks back to the most recent definition. So in this case, once we look back to sentence, what's the value that we assigned it?
Hello.
Yeah, it's hello, right? So since we have hello defined, since that was the most recent definition and we didn't make any changes to the variable, so the computer would just recognize hello, and here it would almost just replace it with hello. And since we have another hello, basically what it just does, it does something called concatenation, which just basically means that it's adding two strings and their text together. So for example, if I ran it, it prints hello, hello. So it's just adding the two sequence of texts. Do any of you guys have any questions about this?
Okay, someone has a question. That's when they use this for shape, and this is implemented for shape and colors. He's asking if it can be used for shapes and colors.
Yeah, it can definitely be used for shapes and colors, but we have to use like what I was talking about before. There's like a lot of different libraries in Python that allow you to create like interactive elements instead of just, so this would just be like the back end of like whatever games or websites that you may be seeing, but you would be able to create like a visual aspect using libraries.
Like how Himani's mentioning libraries, if I remember correctly, you have to import them. You have to be able to say like, oh, like if I want something from this library, I have to like say in my code. Because if we have it just like this, it really only performs super basic functions like we've shown, like combining strings or combining numbers. So you'd have to go basically add.
Sorry to cut in, Yiko. We're not hearing you very clearly. Yiko, we're not hearing you very clearly.
Oh, sorry. I was saying that for library. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, I was saying for libraries, in order to use them, you have to import them in your code, because just the simple Python we have here right now, it only can perform basic functions. So in order to do things like shapes and colors, we'd have to grab a library and add it to our code so that we can do more things.
Yeah, but kind of going back to the original question, you can't exactly concatenate shapes and colors because through like the libraries, you can define like new colors using their just the predefined values that Python has, like red or yellow. But we won't be able to really go into all of those details today because it's a little bit more complicated.
Okay.
Just to kind of go off of like what we've had a little bit before, can someone tell me what they think this would do? Oh. And say I defined our string to be so what do you think would happen when we have a number and a string of text together? Does anyone have a guess?
Okay, if somebody here wants to try, tell us your name and see. I think the answer is 11 because He said the answer is 11 high. Categorized says the answer is 11 high.
I was just going to say, I think very close, except, see, let me just run it for you. Oh. But the problem is we can't actually do addition with integers and strings. So what you'd have to do instead is do something, you would just have to pass it as different input. So if you do commas, it'll do what you were kind of saying. But here in this case, remember that I replaced it with 8 times 3 and not 8. So since we have a multiplication there, it would first do 3. And then the cool thing about Python is it follows what's something called order of operations. I'm sure maybe some of you guys have heard of it before. So it would do a multiplication first, so which is 24, and then add that back to 3. So then you would get 27. And then since now we have a comma instead of a plus sign, it wouldn't give you an error. So it would just print both of them onto your screen.
Okay, sorry. I think we did not see the multiplication sign. We thought it was a plus sign.
Oh, I can try zooming in. Is this better?
Much better, much better. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks for letting me know. And then, does anyone have any predictions as to what this will do? So what happens if you multiply a string with integers? Do you guys think it would give the same error again? That you can't do integers and strings?
Hey, you say the string multiplied by 3, what would it be? Okay, try. Someone will try. 3 high.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, that's correct. It would print high 3 times.
Hi.
Yeah. So the cool thing, even though it's technically numbers and strings, the computer still allows you to do multiplication by printing it 3 times. Are there any questions about this so far?
Yes. Hello.
At the quotation size, are we not able to see program into the languages, or we must use it inside to use the computer understand X-ray?
Okay, he said, do we need to use the quotation symbols or quotation signs for the computer to understand the language? That's his question.
Yeah, see, the problem is if we don't use quotations, as I was talking about before, since we're defining variables with normal English letters, it thinks that this high is also a variable. So it'll give you an error saying it can't find the variable named high. So that's why we put quotation marks, so that the computer can recognize that it's not just supposed to be a variable, but it's actually just like a string. And you can use single or double quotation marks. So even if I just have it with 1, as you can see, it's like green, so that the computer's just the program's just recognizing that it's a sequence of letters that we want to work with rather than a variable name. So now, yeah, this works and it'll give you the output that we want.
Okay, someone else has a question.
Yeah, of course.
And this interprets text. And Python interprets text. And it interprets any type of text.
He's asking if the language can interpret any type of text. I don't know if you understand what that means.
Do you mean different languages or like numbers also and like this? Because if it's just like different signs, then yes, the language is able to interpret it. So basically, just as long as everything you have is inside of a quotation mark, the program just recognizes it as a sequence of text.
Okay.
So
Any other questions?
yeah, it
Any
would.
other questions?
Also, I think, sorry to interrupt. I think we have less than a minute left because this is my personal Zoom account. We'll have to rejoin if that's fine. So can everyone just rejoin using the same link and we'll finish up with the last part of the presentation or any questions?
Okay. That's fine. Thank you. We'll rejoin.
Yeah, but we can just use the same link. So I'll just end the meeting now.
Okay, so we just left off on doing some more printing things with Python. Is everyone able to hear me better now?
Yeah, I think
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. There was something wrong with my microphone, so I'll have to fix that. But the final thing that we're going to go over a little bit today is an if statement. So in code, in like Python and other programming languages, there are things that the code can do to verify if something meets certain requirements. So we'll just do a simple if statement. So we're going to stay with our number and string variables. So let's say like if our number is greater than 10, it'll print out our string. I see a question in the chat. How do we access this platform? Is it the website you're referring to, like how to type in the Python stuff? If so, the URL is on the screen. I can type it in the chat as well. It's online-python.com.
yeah.
So, actually, Himani, oh yeah, I'll add it.
Me and Arya both put it in the chat, but
okay.
I was also going to say, this is not technically like an official Python, this is great and all of that, but if you want to learn more about Python in depth, it's probably better to install it on a laptop so that you can access files and learn how to do more complicated stuff too.
Yep, this is just like a sample kind of a thing, like to test something. So if we run this code, what do you guys think will happen?
So the simple thing is you can just follow along. So just start by answering the question, is 3 greater than 10?
All right, so if we're going to say that if 3 is greater than 10, then basically the code will not print our string because our number doesn't meet the if statement requirement. However, if we change the greater than sign to a less than sign, is 3 less than 10?
Yes.
All right, let's see if you're right. And yep, because 3 is less than 10, it'll print out our string. So basically, like I said earlier, it's kind of a good way to for coders to kind of verify if something meets certain requirements. In video games, I believe these kind of loops are used a lot. Like if a user types in this thing, it'll come out with this result. So it's used quite a lot in other programming languages and not just Python.
But that's the end of our Python demo. Does anyone have any questions? If not, we'll proceed on to the next part of our presentation.
Hello.
Oh, sorry.
The last thing Nicole said, I didn't quite get it about the game. What we're supposed to do about games. Sorry, I didn't quite get that last sentence she made.
Oh, you're good. I was basically saying, you know how just now we were using if statements? For example, like if 3 is less than 10, then this will happen. In video games, also this is used a lot. For example, if you choose to do this thing, then this other thing will happen. And yeah, that's what I was basically saying. And if statements are also something that appears in other programming languages. So if statements are one of the most commonly used things, along with variables and such.
Okay, thank you. Any question? I have a question. Who? No.
Hello?
Someone have a question here. I don't know.
Oh. What was the question? Or
Check why you need one by 1 to 2. She said, why do you leave number 1 to 2? How? Okay, person, she's asking why do you use space? When you're typing in your text in the Python language, why do you leave spaces? That's her question.
so for the if statements, if you noticed, we had a colon. So for if statements, we have like, this was like our program, right? And I think the question was, why there was a space? It's because whenever you have an if statement, it likes to know what's inside the loop and what's not inside. So that, for example, if I had like another statement after, if both of these were just not indented, then the program wouldn't know when to stop the if statement. But if we do have an indent, then we know only to print the string if the number is greater than 10, and then regardless of if the if statement is true or not, the number will be printed. Does that sort of answer your question?
It's not about that. What I understood from what you said is that it helps to differentiate the commands. It helps to differentiate the commands. That's command the second one.
Yeah, it helps just differentiate what's supposed to be like played or like run, like which statement should be run if the statement is true, and then which when we like exit the if statement loop, because like you can technically have more than one statement in the for the conditional to be true. But does that make sense?
It does.
Thank you. Then we'll move on to the next question.
Okay, so can everyone hear me?
Yeah, I think it's good.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, perfect. So I'm going to be talking a little bit about supervised versus unsupervised machine learning. So I know in your last event, Himani and everyone, they kind of talked about what is machine learning and what is AI. But two of the biggest subsets of machine learning are supervised machine learning and unsupervised machine learning. So in supervised machine learning, you have a need for labeled training data. So let's say that my problem is email spam detection. I would want to feed the model emails that are spam, and I would label that as spam, and then emails that are not spam and that are not labeled as spam. And then based off that, I'd be making predictions on that data. And then in unsupervised machine learning, you would give the model unlabeled data and have it find patterns within that data that are not already predefined. So a good example of that one would be customer segmentation, where you have a data set with information about customers, and you're giving the model the ability to find patterns without having to predefine what those patterns would be. Okay, so a big part of the machine learning lifecycle is exploratory data analysis. So for example, when you have a business objective, you want to gather a bunch of data to assess or to like solve a problem, right? So you would get that data, then you'd prepare that data, and do exploratory data analysis. So you would approach analyzing data sets to summarize their main characteristics, and you could do that with the help of graphics and summary statistics. And then you would discover like patterns, outliers, and understand the underlying structure of the data. And then you would visually represent that data with histograms, box plots, and various statistical charts, right? And then you would build a model, evaluate that model, and then deploy the model to understand and gather data to fit your business needs. Okay, so one of the biggest tactics in machine learning is called linear regression. So I have a graph right here, the price of the house versus square footage of a house in Aurora, Illinois. So on the x-axis, I have square footage of a house in Aurora in square feet. And then on the y-axis, I have the price of the house in dollars. So let's say I'm building a model so that I don't need a person to tell me what the price of my house could be, right? I could use this model to get, like, given a square footage of my house, you can tell me what the price of my house will be. So I have a bunch of these data points here. So now I want to fit a line through these data points. Himani, could you click the next button? Okay, so I fit a line through this model, right? But why do I know that this line is the best line? Like, why is the line not moved up a little bit? Why is it not tilted to the left or to the right? And if you go to the next slide, or click the next button, yeah, or go back. Yeah, okay. So essentially what you're doing, right, is all these blue points are data points that were given to the model during training. And so now I'm finding the vertical distance between the blue point and the line of best fit, the red line going through the data points, right? And then I'm going to square all of these just so that if there's a negative value, I'm getting rid of that negative value by squaring it. And then I'm going to sum up all these heights, right? And then I'm going to average them. So now I have, this value is called J, and J is the cost function. In regression, you always want to minimize the cost function so that your line of best fit is the most accurate line you could get. Could you go to the next slide? Okay, so if I try out a bunch of these different lines, right? Yeah, if I try out a bunch of these lines and I get a J value for each of these lines that I've tried, we're going to get like a bowl-like shape, like you can see in this graph. And you want to find the bottom of that bowl, right? And you're going to do this with a process called gradient descent, which involves a lot of math behind it, but basically you're just finding the bottom of that bowl. And when you have the bottom of that bowl, I can tell you the W value, or basically like the slope of the line, right? That is going to give me the smallest error for my linear regression model. Okay, does anyone have any questions?
Okay, I have a question first. I know some of us here have questions. But my first question is this something that we use to, code or teach the machine how to act, or what is actually the use of linear regression? What is the use of getting the average, the maximum average, the minimum average, and how can it be applied? That's my question.
Okay, so I think the question, right, was like, what are the applications of linear regression? Was that right?
Yes.
Okay. So in the example I used, right, I kind of talked about, if you want to go back a couple slides. Yeah, so in this example, I did square footage of a house versus price, right? So let's say someone who owns a house wants to determine how much their house costs, right? Instead of bringing in someone to like look at my house to gather a bunch of data and tell me what my house costs, I could just use this model, feed in the square footage of my house, and it can spit out a number, right? But there's a bunch of applications beyond just housing prices. It can be used in basically any field, right? So in finance, it can be used to like predict stock prices. In marketing, you can estimate like the impact of an advertising campaign on sales revenue. In healthcare, you can predict patient outcomes on factors like age and medical history and etc. So it has applications in every field. Now, the simple linear regression model, like right now I only have square footage versus price, right? But there's a lot of different factors that go into pricing a house. So the number of bedrooms, bathrooms, the building year of the house. These are all really important in determining that price. So in a real model, there would be a lot of different variables, and then we would have to go into models that are a lot more advanced than a simple line, right? But that's the basic idea behind regression, if that makes sense.
It does make sense. Any other question?
Can we use linear progression for stock price in the market?
Okay, so I think the question was like, how is it used to determine stock prices, right?
Yes.
Okay, so determining stocks, right? It's not as simple as like one variable going into it, but you have to have a lot of factors, right? So like imagine I have a model that has factors like price to earning ratio of a company, like debt to equity ratio, revenue growth, profit margins. So again, it'd be a lot more of an advanced model than a line, but the basic idea behind it is the same, right? So like using time analysis, right? You can kind of determine how a stock is going to fluctuate based on historical data from that stock and current data, if that makes sense.
I guess so. Any other question? Any question? Talking about unsupervised machine learning, was it not very similarities to machine intelligence?
Sorry, could you repeat the question?
He said, talking about unsupervised machine learning, is it similar to artificial intelligence? That's his question.
Is it similar to what?
To artificial intelligence.
Oh, artificial intelligence. Okay. So I think when you're doing these kinds of regression models, that would fit more into the subset of machine learning, but AI kind of delves into a lot of advanced topics, right? So there's deep learning, which features things like neural networks, which maybe we can go over it next time, but I wouldn't say, so machine learning is a subset of artificial intelligence. So to answer your question, yes, but it delves more into like regression models and clustering models than it does in neural networks. So like, for example, last time when we showed you ChatGPT, right? That would be more AI than it is machine learning. Does that make sense? Because that utilizes models like large language models, natural language processing, which we can talk about more next time. But to answer your question, yes, this is a kind of AI.
You say that these machine learning is subset right? He's saying that, are you saying that machine learning is a subset of artificial intelligence?
I think first the question, yeah, but
It is.
I was just also gonna add, first the thing to understand is like, what is artificial intelligence, you know? Like, I think when we're like talking about artificial intelligence, it's like, it's a really large field. And when we mean that machine learning is a subset, like the task that we were showing earlier with ChatGPT, that is an example or like an application of artificial intelligence because it's learning from our responses and it's able to give an output that is similar to human text, right? But like how does like the back end of that work? So that's where like the machine learning part comes in, because all of these models are used to like build and train all of that data. So for example, like linear regression, you could train or like classification, you could train these models based on data and then ask it to predict where like new points would lie, and then that's kind of where how it like ties in with artificial intelligence, or like how it helps, if that makes any sense.
Yes. I also want to ask a question. So are you saying ChatGPT can be categorized under unsupervised machine learning?
Yeah, ChatGPT would be unsupervised. I mean, it's been given data to like answer these questions, but it's unsupervised machine learning, yes, because there is no labeled data.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Can we give them a round of applause? Sorry, Himani, do you have any more for us, or this is the end of the presentation?
This is the end. We have like a few links if you want to learn more about like Python, but
okay. Oh, because he said we can go to these websites if you want to learn more about. If you want to learn more about Python, you should go to these websites. That's W3 Schools, Python Institute, right?
yeah, and Python for everybody.
Python for everyone. Oh, okay. Okay, so please, just before you go, we just want to say a little thank you. Our students want to say thank you to you for taking up your time and energy.
Hey everyone, my name is Tutor. On behalf of CSS, on behalf of the students of CSS Olanada, we extend our thanks to you for hosting an incredible hackathon event. Your dedication and hard work made it a resounding success. The innovative ideas and the solutions presented in this event have left us all inspired and motivated. We also want to thank our principal, Mrs. Leslie Chinda, our vice principals, and the teacher. This event has made us, it has empowered us, and it has made us to pursue it, to make us This event has empowered us and made us to pursue our dreams fearlessly, to pursue our passions fearlessly, and we will remain valued as we continue our journeys ahead. Thank you, Illinois Mathematics and Science Academy. Thank you, and thank you for the SWENext Club. Thank you for being an inspiration to us all. Thank you.